Welcome to Talk2Connect and our very first webcast streaming live from Stockholm, Sweden. Welcome Charlotte and Kjell-Terje. My name is Lisa Tallroth and I will be your host in all the Talk2Connect channels throughout this year. There will be webcasts like today, but also webinars and the upcoming Talk2Connect podcast. All with the same purpose, to explore and deepen our knowledge about voluntary return and reintegration. An interesting and complex field, as I'm sure you've noticed already. Before we get started on today's topic, which is return counselling, I want you to meet two of the initiators of this project. Kjell-Terje Torvik, Project Manager at Return and Reintegration Facility, RRF, the network supporting Talk2Connect, and also welcome to Charlotte Kirotar, Head of Unit at International Development Cooperation at Swedish Migration Agency, SMA. And I'll start with you, Kjell-Terje, because I think you better present RRF a bit.
Yeah, we're a network that support our member states in developing the work that are being done on return and integration, and we belong to an organization called ICMPD, International Center for Migration Policy Development.
And you work with many projects. How come you initiated this Talk2Connect?
We saw that there was a need for what we call the first line workers to have more knowledge on what we call on-the-ground realities. And this was actually a part of a project that the Swedish Migration Agency led a couple of years ago in Afghanistan. There was an element of feedback, but we saw that the counselors was really appreciating this. So we developed this concept together with Swedish Migration Agency, and we will of course continue supporting SMA on this. But yes, here we are now today.
And what can our viewers and participants expect from this year?
We hope, of course, that the viewers will, by the end of this cycle, know more and understand more about the dynamics between the different elements in the process of return and reintegration.
And Charlotte, how come we're standing here in Stockholm having a team from the Swedish Migration Agency working on this?
Well, we at the Swedish Migration Agency, we have a long experience of working with voluntary return. We have very experienced return counselors and experts, and we also have a well-developed process for voluntary return. As well as this studio, it's a very advanced studio, and we have the technical capabilities of producing webcasts and web seminars and podcasts.
But it's not at all a Swedish matter. It's a European and even international project, this. And early on, we asked the viewers to tell us from where they're watching. And I think we can create a word cloud out of that now. It's dropping in, and please continue to tell us from where you're watching. We see that we have viewers from Germany, from North Macedonia, from Turkey, Lithuania, Belgium, Iraq, Halmstad, which is a small city in Sweden. But we are happy to see people from all over the world, right, in this project. That's one of the big goals, Kjell-Terje.
Yes, this kind of it shows that return and reintegration is connected and is connected throughout the world.
Yeah. And on that note, we will not stay nor in Sweden nor in Europe. We will travel the world. Can you tell us something about the upcoming plans for our webcasts, Charlotte?
Yes, of course. Well, today we'll be following, among others, a return counsellor from Belgium. And we plan to follow other return counsellors and NGOs and others working with voluntary return in other European countries too during this year. But we're also going to go to countries of origin. We will be going to the Middle East, we'll be going to Africa's Horn and West Africa. For instance, Iraq and Senegal, where we will meet return counsellors post-arrival and also returnees to hear their stories of returning to their home country.
So we have many exciting things ahead of us. Thank you so much, Charlotte. And Kjell-Terje, I will get back to you shortly. You will help me introduce the European landscape of return and reintegration. But first, I think we should get this show started. And today's topic is pre-departure measures with a focus on return counselling. We're going to visit Belgium, as you heard. We're going to learn more about the differences between counselling provided by states agencies and by NGOs. We'll talk to return counsellors at the federal agency Fedasil. They offer help desks in 5 cities. We meet with another important stakeholder within Belgian return, the non-governmental organisation Caritas. Join us in their service centre in Brussels to find out how the Caritas counselling looks like. And following that, a panel discussion with 3 experts in the field of return counselling. Hello, you tuned in already. Great to see you, and I will get back to you shortly. And then by the end of the webcast, you'll meet Mikael Ribbenvik, General Director at SMA and also Chair of EUAA. So this is today's agenda, and as we saw reflected in the World Cloud, the European landscape of return and reintegration is wide and complex. Kjell-Terje Torvik, I want you to help me to give a short introduction to the room we're entering.
Yes. So here we have Europe. Actually, it's called the EU+. It's 31 countries. And if you look at the statistics, we see that during the period of 2018 to 2022, so 5 years, we saw that there were 3.1 million, what we call in statistics, first-time applicants, asylum seekers, coming to Europe. And out of those 3.1 million people, 1.7 million received an order to leave, which means that you cannot remain at the EU territory.
50%?
50% more or less,
that.
Yes. And out of those 1.7 million people, in the same period, 420,000 actually returned. But that also tells us that many people actually remains in Europe. And the question then is, how is this managed? Both on the return side, but also on the reintegration side, what we call pre-departure and post-arrival. So if we look at Europe, this is just examples on organizations, international organizations, non-governmental organizations, state agencies. We also have EU agency, Frontex. They are all involved in what we call the pre-departure work. Return work. They are organized and structured, have different mandates, and it varies very much across Europe. Yeah. But they are doing the current work on return.
So many stakeholders in Europe, and then when we look at the other side of this journey on the reintegration side.
Yes.
Then we have even more stakeholders.
Yeah, then we can add even more stakeholders. So if we look across the world, you can see that some more organizations are also on this side. We will meet Caritas later on. But here we have additional organizations and structures on how this is conducted. And hopefully, Talk2Connect will help the viewers to actually understand how the system works, and introducing also specific countries and specific organizations. But the idea here is to create a bridge between what we call return or pre-departure with the post-arrival and the reintegration. That is a key element in Talk2Connect.
And this side of the bridge we'll cover further on in Talk2Connect. Today, in today's webcast, we'll stay in Europe, since there is a lot to be done before departure. This is a crucial time and it needs to be taken advantage of. Can you tell me a little about the pre-departure measures?
Yeah, one very important element when you talk about return and reintegration is preparedness. So how prepared is a person that is going to return. One other element is expectations. What can you expect from integration support? So all of these are elements that is reoccurring. It keeps coming back as a topic of discussion. Mm.
And you summed it up quite nicely when you said that there is a lot of time before departure, but once you entered your country of origin, you will have little time. So the more you can prepare in advance, the better.
Yes, indeed.
And so thank you so much, Kjell Terje Torvik. I'm sure we're going to see more of you throughout this year, and we will try to explore this landscape and explain it to all the viewers. And now we're going to start by taking a look at one of the member states, Belgium. In Belgium, it works like this. Once the legal process for residence permit is over, the migrant is referred to Fedasil. That is a federal organization which also takes part in the reception, and they provide accommodation and so forth. But what they do also is that they offer return counselling. And they have a setup with designated return desks in 5 cities. I think we have a map of that here. Belgium and the 5 cities that have these return desks. And me and the team went to the return desk in Liège. Let's take a look.
Welcome, this is our return desk here in Liège, Belgium, Wallonia. Come, I will show you. So this is a normal day in the office. You have counseling right now with my colleague. When the people are coming here, we welcome them at the door, and if they have to wait, they wait here in the sofa. And after a few minutes, they can go at the office, and we ask them if they want something to drink or are they okay, and so on, to create a really safe place here. So the people are coming here in our counter, and I give them the information about voluntary return and ask them about their situation, and I explain to them what can we do for them. So we can have a flight ticket for them, bus ticket to go to country home, and we can help them with a little amount, in cash, before the departure. And in some case, we can help them with reintegration assistance. So they can do a micro business at home. Colombie, ok. Vous vouliez rendez-vous avec Idriss spécifiquement ou avec moi?
Non, n'importe.
Peu importe. Attendez, je prends dans mon agenda et je vous dis ça tout de suite. Hein. It's important to meet the people face to face because when you have the people on the phone, you can't see if they are okay. So, for example, if I have a dad on the phone and he says to me, okay, I want to go home with my children and my wife, I need to see the children, the wife, to see, okay, are they okay? Because we have a lot of people who have a psychiatric disorder or psychological problem, and we need to be sure that it's okay for them to go home and to provide them medical assistance or psychological assistance if they need that. I tell them that it's a voluntary return. So voluntary, it's important. You can decide at any point to say, no, I won't go back to my home anymore. And you can stay in Belgium. It's okay for me. It's very important to say that it's a choice, and you have the choice to stay or to go home. And they think about it, and after they come back to the office or no.
I would say the main obstacles, first the image of Fedasil. Fedasil is a federal organization, and sometimes migrants, when they have to work with a federal official organization, they are a bit scared, I would say. And they really think it's the state, so it will be better maybe to work with a social organization and not with the state organization. We want to offer the voluntary return to people as an opportunity, not as the last choice they have. And for some, they really come to the desk, voluntary return desk, as the last chance. Like they tried everything, still they want to come. And in that case, sometimes it's difficult to explain to them that it's a voluntary return, because they feel like, okay, I cannot stay in Belgium because I don't have the paper, I cannot find a work or whatever, so I come because I have no other choice. So sometimes it's difficult to have a good information, a good perception of people, because there is another reality, the reality of the state, and there is the voluntary return program. So
when the migrant is in his country home, okay, administratively we think that the case is closed, but it's never really closed, because you can call me or send me an email, and at any time I'm available. So it's closed for the papers, for the file, but the link between me and the person is not really closed, never.
So that was the return desk at Fedasil in Liège, Belgium. And we'll get back to Belgium later on. But first, I want you to meet the panel we have prepared for you. We have 3 experts in the field of return and reintegration, calling in from different cities. Diamantola Vlantoni, welcome. You're calling in from Athens, I know. You're a training and capacity building officer, now working for the RRF. You're also one of the creators behind Cadre, that is a training program for return counselors. Hugo Rickberg, you work with the Swedish Migration Agency as a senior specialist. You have deep experience from return and reintegration. But you're calling in from Berlin today, I believe. And then finally from Denmark, Signe Søndergaard, program specialist at the Danish Refugee Council, which is the major NGO that provides return counselling in Denmark. Welcome, all 3 of you. Yeah, so today's subject is pre-departure measures, in which return counsellors plays an important role. We just saw an example from Belgium, but as stressed before, the precondition for return counselling, they may vary quite a bit throughout Europe. And I'd like you, Diamantola, since you've been working to set some sort of common ground for counsellors all over Europe by setting up a training program, I'd like to hear what kind of differences you've noticed on the definition of counselling and how it's performed throughout the member states. We'll have to do that start again. I don't think your sound is on. Sorry, we can't hear you, Diamantola. Okay, we'll try it again. Okay, I think I hear we have some audio issues, so we'll start with Signe Søndergaard, coming from Denmark. You worked with I know that you've taken part of this cadre training program, but and also implemented quite a lot in Denmark. Can you tell us a little about how your setup is with the return counselling?
Sure. Yeah, I think to perform return counselling is really a challenging job. On the one hand, you really have to have substantial knowledge, hard knowledge about the law, the legal process, the local and national context, and all of the AVR programs. And on the other hand, you also need to have the ability to interact with the persons in vulnerable situation with empathy and with good communication skills. And this is something that we work with a lot in our team at DRC, performing return counselling. We work with the purpose of supporting informed decision and supporting clarification. So we try to really empower people to, in our counseling session, to make an informed decision. but it's often a very complicated process to reach a decision. It's not always a linear process. It's not from A to B. Always, you have to really engage with a nuanced understanding of the clarification process a lot of rejected asylum seekers go through. So time is definitely an important element, and I think if you're serious about working with promoting voluntary return and sustainable reintegration, you need to allow people enough time to adapt and to prepare themselves for the return. And I also think it's important to mention, just really briefly, that sometimes as a return counselor, you work with some condition that kind of counteracts the purpose of a voluntary return, because you cannot pressure people to return. And from experience, we know that time, dignity, and a safe transition from one country to another is important.
But I think you touched upon a well-known obstacle right there about the people needing time. At the same time, you have a process to handle, and this will need to be taken care of in a certain amount of time. Hugo Rickberg from the SMA, what do you find to be the most challenging aspects of counselling?
As far as I see it, I think the most challenging thing, also as Signe was talking about a little bit, is the timing and the time frame you have to at least from a state perspective adjust. You can't adjust as a state actor that much, at least. The one who has to adjust to the time is the returnee, and that is a challenge in itself, because there's a limited time frame, a window of opportunity, so to speak, where the returnee has to make at least some intentions. And I think this is something which is common, not between the European member states when it comes to return counselling. I think the time is always against the return counsellor. So timing and time.
Yeah, I can see that you agree on that, and you do represent two different kind of stakeholders in this, one state agency and one NGO, and I wanted really to start. I think your sound works now, Diamantola, because you have more of an overview working on the training program for counsellors all over Europe. So. Can you maybe give the picture of how can the counselling differ between the member states? Can you say something about that?
Okay. Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, good. Thank you so much, and hello to everyone. Well, indeed, the landscape around return counselling and reintegration in Europe is quite unknown yet, and quite fragmented, one could say. And so different approaches are being followed by the member states, and also the definitions of what return counselling is and which services it should entail can be different among the member states. What we have seen up to today is that some member states provide counselling in the pre-return phase in helping migrants make an informed decision, but without imposing any decision. So this is the case for the voluntary returns and for those people who have not yet received the return order, while other member states only provide information on the different alternatives with or without legal counselling. And in other member states, the operation reality is that return counselling in the pre-departure phase is a part of the general, let's say, migration management system. And thus, the counsellor acts as the coordinator of the whole return process and has to assist the migrant in the administrative steps they have to follow, but also to ensure somehow compliance with the return procedures. Keeping this in mind, the tasks also the return counselors have to do are quite different among the member states. So while the goal is to provide, as we said, impartial and neutral and reliable information in a language they understand, which should be tailored to the needs of the different stages of migration. Sometimes,
I know you have a lot to tell us about this, but I just wondered, since we saw already one obstacle pointed out by Signe and Hugo, coming from two different organizations, and yet trying to find a common ground for the counselors' training. I was thinking, is that something that you can approach and address, the fact that timing seems to be so crucial? You need to counsel someone that needs time yet is under stress. So how can that be handled from a training perspective? I'm thinking if you can give us some ideas on that.
Well, the timing is crucial, as colleagues said before, and sometimes counselors do not have the possibility of having, let's say, follow-up sessions with the migrants that are mostly needed. But it's not only this. The difficulty here is that they also, apart from time, have to perform, let's say, their tasks in settings that are not very comfortable working to. And we in the trainings discuss with people about providing safety, about providing a space that counseling can easily take place. But on the other hand, the reality is that people have to work in detention facilities, in camps, reception camps, or other accommodation facilities that a lot of people are staying in together. So what we try to do in these trainings is to provide some general guidelines. I would say like to professionalize the procedure and the counseling by providing tips to the return counselors, some basic steps to follow in order to make their work easier, to provide better quality services to the migrants, but also in a sense to protect themselves, because it is a difficult procedure for both sides, one would say.
Yeah, that counseling is really something that can be professionalized, and we'll get back to that. I just want us to check in on Caritas, as promised, because we have another Belgian case. Fedasil is not the only stakeholder within return counseling. They work closely together with the NGO Caritas, and you may recognize Caritas as a large international organization, which it is, but the Belgian Caritas organization takes a big part in return counseling. And to learn more, we went to their international service desk in Brussels. Let's take a look at that.
Oui, bien sûr. Hello, welcome to Caritas. I am Jihad. I'm receptionist here in Caritas. My job is to receive people, the first contact when people came to Caritas asking help.
So as Caritas, we have our first line service where everybody is actually open to come with different kind of questions. And one of those questions is the request for voluntary return. So they actually meet with the people, they talk about some logistical aspects of it. And when a person has then a right for some reintegration, we as a second line service actually come into the picture and we meet with the people. Often what we see is that persons will actually financially, usually it's a lot of expectations, a lot of support, a lot of help that they will get after return by our local colleagues because they are crucial in this. That they spend thousands and thousands of euros to come here and they actually want to see that back, sort of. So we have to be very clear that there's certain project that is in place, funded by the government, by Fedasil, that is only possible for them. When it comes to maybe some social expectations, it's not our colleagues who will find an apartment for them. It's not them who will find a job for them. So they have a certain responsibility to manage their own life after return. I think as an NGO, there are certain implications, but I think it's also the what Fedasil has created over the years. So there's a lot of trust between IOM and Caritas and Fedasil to do a sort of this together. Yes, as an NGO, there's often a lower threshold because you can come to our social service not only for return, but for different questions. And return can be one of them, and they will be helped as such. While some government implications, there's always, it always has a certain name. While an NGO is a little bit more lower threshold to say. I think what our main goal is as well to really go and see what is the decision of the returnee. Do we feel that this person is ready for return? If we feel that he is still looking for other options, we'll refer him back maybe to another organization that might help him, maybe referral to a lawyer who can talk about his decisions again, or social assistance from our first line service who can explain what his or her options are in Belgium. We will only go with the returnee in the process of return and reintegration if we feel that he or her is ready for that.
For me, it's important that they make their own decision. I don't want to influence nothing. I won't make any false promise. So I give them the information. We offer this, the flight ticket, for example, and you have the right to this kind of assistance in your country. If you want more information, we organize an appointment with my colleagues with the reintegration team. They can organize a meeting with our partner in your country, and then you make the decision. Most important skills, I think it's adaptation, patience also, because sometimes we need to find the best way to communicate, just this, because just the language is a big challenge. Sometimes we don't find the translators, or we need to communicate with Google Translate, pictures, hands. So we need to be creative. It's our important skill, and we learn to be like a Swiss knife, and to be just open mind, and always with a good mood, good mind. It helps to create a trust relation with people.
What is difficult doing this is often the fact that the voluntariness is questionable. So often it's because people receive a negative decision to their asylum procedure, because they are in a regular situation, they have difficulty getting an income. So we do see people with a very difficult situation in their country of origin who return because of the fact that it's not livable or manageable here in Belgium or in Europe, to say such.
Merci, bonne journée, au revoir.
Yeah, that was from Caritas Service Center in Brussels, and they touched upon several obstacles, and one mentioned was that you as a return counsellor have to consider the needs and wishes of the migrant, but also stick on the guidelines and priorities of your organization. You nod, you recognize this, and I wonder, the panel, what your thoughts are on this. You'd like to start, Hugo?
Absolutely. I mean, I acknowledge absolutely the tough work, the hard work of being a counselor in today's Europe, whether you are doing it from a state agency or from an NGO or as a volunteer. It's indeed something which is, from many perspectives, a tough job. Not mentioning the tough work of meeting these returnees in a vulnerable situation. So indeed, what we spoke about earlier on, that we need to professionalize the role of being a counselor. I remember myself when I did counseling back in the days, how much it both gives you to be a counselor, but also how much energy it takes from you.
Signe, I heard you say that you recognize this role stress as conflicting interests. How do you handle that, being caught in the middle?
I think I agree with Hugo that this is counseling is a professional activity and should be treated as such. And counseling is not just information giving; it's much more. It's guidance, and I think if you take aside all the external factors that you, as an individual counselor, cannot have, you don't have the power to change, and you just look at what is going on in a counseling room, then you have a lot of influence. Then you can do a lot, because it really matters how you approach a person in a vulnerable situation, how you disseminate complicated information. So if you approach with empathy and with good communication skills, I think you have a big influence. And this is something that we work with a lot at DRC, different techniques, different communication tools, how to build up trust. And it's also part of staff care, I think. One thing is that you manage the counseling sessions better, but you also have some tools and some techniques to lean back on in a difficult counseling situation.
Yeah, and this is your area of expertise, Diamantola. In short time, to build confidence and to take advantage of that window of opportunity, what would be a good way to start trying to professionalize the counseling?
In order to provide counseling, like as we said before, in a safe space, the idea general behind this is to ensure the autonomy of people and the fact that they can have a control over their lives, over the choices they have to make. So there are some key principles related to autonomy that can be translated into practical tips and ideas for the organizations and for the counselors. As for the organizations, it's good to provide easy access to the procedure with no huge waiting lines. Could be easy to make it easy, make an appointment, to ensure confidentiality, simple stuff like this. And as for the counselors, it is always good, to show respect to the person that you have in front of you. You can ask for permission before asking. It is good to adapt your communication style, to the person that you have in front of you. And it's really, really important that you introduce yourself by saying your name, by clearly saying your role within the organizations, your limitations, what you can do or what you cannot do, and always having a clear agenda, as we say, within the counseling session, and inform the migrant on what is coming next. So let's say to minimize the surprises that a person can face during the process.
And these are good tips, whether you work for an NGO or a state agency. But I want to touch a bit more on that, because we have a representative from each kind of stakeholder, and also we heard in the cases from Belgium. And I'm thinking, maybe, would you say, Hugo, that there are aspects of counselling better performed outside of the governmental agency and vice versa? Or what are your thoughts on this?
My thought is that we can complement each other, and I think we are seeing such a movement more and more in more European member states, that there is a division of mandates, maybe we could call it, where state agencies has a clear-cut mandate. We have to perform within certain boundaries of the law, and we can do that. But I think we need also to be open for complementarity, and that the NGO sector has a lot to offer, because in the end we are talking about voluntary return, where we're talking about an individual oftenly, or a family. in a vulnerable situation. So we have the same goal, and to make this being a process where in the end it should be a solution that works for the individual. I think we need to more and more cooperate and coordinate, maybe even at least be aware of each other and acknowledge our different roles in this.
Signe, you work for the NGO, the Danish Refugee Council. Do you have any top-of-mind ideas of how to improve the cooperation between the state agency and the NGOs? What needs to be done to make that work better?
I think it's, as Hugo said, we have complementary roles, but we can take on a different position as an NGO. So we at DRC, we sometimes have the same messages, but the messages are perceived in a different way because we offer impartial counseling. We don't have any power to decide anything in their lives. So we take on the approach that they're experts of their own life, and that makes it different for the process and for the clarification and to support an informed decision that may sometimes be to return. Also, as NGO, we can talk about different topics than the state. It's easier to bring up a variety of topics with an NGO who doesn't really have a power to decide anything, and this is often an important step before you can reach a decision about what to do. That you have addressed all of the strategies that you may have. Some of them are maybe not legal, but you have a safe space, a safe counseling room where you can be guided and you can get information, but in a neutral manner. So I think. The role of NGOs are important if you want to promote voluntary return.
Yeah. Thank you so much, all three of you. You opened up the floor for this subject, and I'm sure we're going to come back to many of the things you touched upon here today in this rather brief introduction. And Diamantola, we can actually offer a webinar where you can go more deep into what you've mentioned today, you introduced today, because next Thursday there will be a webinar for the frontline counsellors, and you are welcome to join that on Thursday, March 23rd with Diamantola Vlantoni. But for now, I say thank you to Hugo Rickberg and to Signe Søndergaard. Thank you so much for joining Talk2Connect today. And
thank you for having us.
As I think and hope that you noticed, we want to consider as many aspects and perspectives as possible in Talk2Connect, from the frontline situation to the overall European approach to voluntary return and reintegration. And to help out with the latter, we invited Mikael Ribbenvik. He's the General Director of SMA. He's also the Chair of EUAA, and he has a very long experience from all fields of migration. And when I spoke to him earlier today, I asked why he stresses forced return as a prerequisite for the work on voluntary return. Listen to this.
Yes, well, thank you first of all for having me here discussing this very important subject. And I'd like to start even wider, perhaps. We are our agencies throughout Europe, we're responsible for giving protection to people that are in need of protection. The bar is quite high in international law, and the people that don't reach that bar, who are rejected from our agencies and then the courts, they have to go home. And that part is not depending on the person, whether it's voluntarily or forceful return. The decision is not voluntarily. You have to follow that. And also to be able to provide these systems and these programs and to provide protection to people, the system needs to work. So the return is a very important part of the system. Otherwise, there's no use in having a protection system. So it is a crucial part of the overall asylum systems in Europe. Then what you said about forceful return and the link to voluntarily, we have seen throughout the years that in countries where it's very difficult or almost impossible for us to return people who just refuses, then we have a very low rate of voluntary return. And they're interconnected because then it's up to the person whether to follow the decision or not. So I think a main objective here is for Europe to have functioning readmittance agreements with countries. And it's also, according to international law, you are obliged to take back your own citizens. So there's nothing strange about that. And we see there are many examples throughout the years when the EU has managed to get a functional readmittance agreement. So people know that there is that option of forceful return. Then you're much more interested in the benefits of the voluntary return. And for us, this is the best thing for the state, but also for the individual, that you can return in a humane and dignified way, as opposed to being forced by, being returned by force.
And since you can help us look at this from a structural level, what do you say is the main obstacle today or main challenge for European return and return counselling?
Well, in the overall picture, there's a lot of individual problems also that caseworkers encounter every day. But on the more systemic overall view, I think there's two things. Number one, there are countries in Europe that they don't have so evolved return programs, or not even working with voluntary return. So that is something very important. But the other thing is, like I was saying before, if there's no readmittance agreement, then it's very difficult to talk to people on that, because they know as long as they don't do it by themselves, they don't have to. But there are so many downsides with that, because when you stay on in a country in Europe without a permit, you're in danger of being exploited. Maybe you don't have access to the labor market. Maybe you have very little or almost nothing in an allowance from the state. And you're putting yourself at risk, or your children, putting them at risk of being exploited in different ways. Often labor exploitment. We see that often. So we need to work on these systems. We need to further them, find new ways. But also it's a very important task for both EU and the national governments to get these readmission agreements, so we can have a working system.
Yeah, and I like to stay with the readmission agreements because and the importance of them, because I've heard counsellors coming back to that, but at the same time we do have countries with the agreement, but it's still really hard to facilitate the return. So can you say a little bit more about what the meaning in practice is for that agreement, to have that agreement?
Yeah, as an end result, then you can take return people with force. But as I said before, when that is on the table, if that's on the menu, a lot more people will consider voluntary return because of the benefits of that. So I would say that a readmission agreement is not first and foremost so we can put people on the plane. It is because then we, in a more serious way, can talk about voluntary return. And with a readmission agreement, then those numbers will go up.
What do you see would be the point of trying to find common grounds on the return counselling from within the European member states?
It's exactly the same challenges. No matter what country you are in Europe, it's the same job, it's the same challenges. Then there are different tweaks on it, how elaborate your programs are, how much you're spending on these programs. Also, some countries are, and also on the European level, is trying to work with reintegration just to be able to make that person see the future a bit clearer. But the main challenges and the core is common for us all. This is not different between different countries.
And now you have the possibility to address frontline counselors all over Europe, since they are the ones watching this webcast. And what would be your, how would you like to address them, or what would be your message to them?
It would be wrong to me to address people that are really the experts who are sitting with people every day. I am not in the place to tell you how to work, but my experience is, number one, like we heard in one of the programs here, they don't always trust us. You know, they don't trust the government. They sometimes take their information from different sources, and also sometimes they get tricked by that. So for us, it's very important to be honest in everything we say, not describe something in pink colors, but to tell it how it is. And there's a lot of problems, and we can't hide from them. So honesty, I think, is number one to say something. Another thing is, my experience is also that people, they don't want to go home. They want to stay in the country. They have used every legal measure available, taking cases to court, reopening cases, coming with new evidence. And sometimes they see the talk with one of the return officers or return counselors would be just another opportunity to present the case. And it's very important that that is not our work when we're working with return. That has been through courts, and not to be caught up in a new negotiation situation, but to talk about with the provisions of return and how we can help and make that a humane and dignified return. And the last thing, I think also, I mean, everybody that works with this knows how difficult it is. So you can't have the goal to fix everyone's problem. And maybe this sounds a bit hard, but we can't fix everybody's problem. We can do our share, getting people into programs where they exist, getting maybe there's, in some countries, there are cash benefits, and also explain the options. And then many times you're met with a question, but how am I going to manage this here? And how will my kids manage this? And sometimes you really, as a human being, you really want to fix other people's problems because you really have that, you have a big heart, or you really, you don't like seeing people in distress. But if you have the end goal to fix all problems, you're not going to fix anything. So those three things: honesty, not negotiating, and not thinking that you can fix everybody's problem.
And today you met representatives from both NGOs and the state authorities that deals with returns, as in the example from Belgium. Do you have any thoughts on this, the NGO versus state authority counselling, and how this can be dealt with in different ways?
I think we're seeing a shift since a few years, where there are many NGOs in Europe that are more interested in supporting these programs with their know-how. Because they see what happens to families or individuals just staying on indefinitely in a country, and what kind of trouble they can get in. And so I think they more now than before see how they can make a useful contribution here. And as I said before, trust is quite low many times towards government, and trust is higher with these organizations. So I think they have a crucial part to play. And if we as governments can cooperate with NGOs in the return field, I think it would be very good for all.
All right. Thank you so much, Mikael Ribbenvik, for joining us here at Talk2Connect.
Thank you. I love being here. Thank you.
So we almost reached the end of our hour we have here today, and I hope today's webcast has worked as an introduction to the field of return counselling, and that you join us on this exploring journey and upcoming events. As I said, next week we arrange a webinar on the 23rd of March. We're inviting frontline counsellors from all of Europe to learn more from counselling training officer Diamantola Vlantoni, who you met earlier. And look out for an invitation. You should have gotten that in your inbox already if you signed up for this webcast. And our next Talk2Connect webcast will be on the 13th of April. I hope to see you then. Make sure that you're on the invitation list, and always look out for messages and invitations from us. Finally, and important, please feel free to contribute, to share your thoughts and ideas on topics you think we should address in upcoming events. Use the same site as in the beginning, ahaslides.com/talk2. Here you can let us know what topics you want to hear more about, or what countries or organizations we should look into. ahaslides.com, Talk2Connect, you even have a QR code you can use easily. And of course, you're always welcome to email us if you have any questions. That would be on talk2connect@migrationsverket.se. You'll reach us. talk2connect@migrationsverket.se. So until next time, hope to see you soon, and thank you so much for watching today. Bye.